Hello and welcome to the Emmanuel podcast, where we talk things God, tech, life. Today's episode is one that will change the way we think about life, morality, and decision making. We're talking about good versus God, because something being good doesn't automatically mean it's God's will. Have you ever had an opportunity that seemed perfect, but later realized that it wasn't right? Maybe a job offer that had great pay but no peace, or a relationship that looked ideal but ended in disaster. Why does this happen? Because good isn't always God. Today we will explore how the Bible differentiates between good and God's will, how the tree of knowledge of good and evil is the source of both good and bad morals, why being moral doesn't guarantee going to heaven, how to live by God's desires instead of human logic. Let's dive into this. Not everything that is good is from God, and not everything from God looks good at first. God told Saul to destroy the Amalekites, but Saul kept the best animals for sacrifice. That sounds good, right? Worshipping God with sacrifices. But God rejected Saul because he wanted obedience, not just good deeds. Sometimes good intentions can be disobedience in disguise. Imagine using a beautiful, smooth road that looks right, but it's leading you the wrong way. No matter how good it feels, you're still lost. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is destruction. Peter told Jesus not to go to the cross. It sounded like love, like protection, like a good idea. But Jesus rebuked him, calling him Satan. Why? Because Peter's good idea was against God's will. Imagine you are Peter and you are telling Jesus not to go to the cross. That sounds like love, like protection, like a good idea. But then Jesus responds to you and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Your idea was good, but it was against God's will. That's the little story of what happened with Jesus and Peter. I've had moments in my life where I chased good things, opportunities, friendships, but later realized they weren't God's will. That's when I learned to prioritize His direction over my reasoning. The misconception. Many people think the tree of knowledge of good and evil only introduced evil, but it also introduced a good human-defined system where people decided right and wrong without God. Biblical foundation. Before Adam and Eve ate from the tree, their only standard was God's will. After eating, they started defining good and evil for themselves. That's where human morality began. Separation from God. When God literally told them that they would die when they eat, or when God told Adam that he would die if he eats from the tree, that death literally meant separation from God, where he will not be having freedom to make his choices. And people will ask, why was the tree there in the first place? Before Adam and Eve ate from the tree, their only standard was God's will. After eating, they started defining good and evil for themselves. And that's where human morality began. Separation from God. The passing of the knowledge. How did Cain know how to kill? Who taught him? No one. The knowledge was already in him, passed down from the tree. Sin is not always taught. Sometimes it's inherited. By default, that's the human nature, the nature of sin. As David said in the Bible, "In sin did my mother conceive me." Think about how society defines good today. What was wrong 50 years ago is good now. What's bad today might be good tomorrow. That's the problem. When we base morality on human knowledge instead of God's will, it constantly changes. The common belief. A lot of people think, as long as I'm a good person, I'll go to heaven. But is that what the Bible teaches? Jesus himself said, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven." Some of these people prophesied and did miracles in his name, But he said, I never knew you. Why? Because they did good things without a real relationship with him. The rich young ruler, this man was morally good. He followed all the commandments. But when Jesus asked him to go give up all his wealth and follow him, he refused. Why? Because his goodness wasn't enough. He lacked submission to God. Imagine a doctor who heals others but refuses to take the cure for his own disease. That's what it's like to do good works but reject God's salvation. Living according to God's will. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. God knows tomorrow. He knows the outcome of every decision. That's why following him brings peace and security. I'm less scared of outcomes than a normal person because I follow instructions of the one who knows the future. As we wrap up, be in God's will. Many things will seem right, but always ask, is this God or just good? Remember Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Take time today to pray and ask God to show you his will. If you've been living based on human logic, it's time to shift to divine direction. If this episode blessed you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for tuning in to the Emmanuel podcast. Stay blessed and stay in God's will, and see you the next time.